We're talking about all of us who have too much stuff in our house.
Right.
And when it's a problem is when you can't do the things you want to do in your house because the stuff is around.
Teacher's like, okay, everybody, all right, pop quiz time. We're going to do the vocabulary to it. And I just yell out, wait, I got to make my cheat sheet.
I like to joke that I make my living throwing away dead people's sex toys.
I can guarantee you there is nothing you have felt that I haven't felt.
Yeah, and I am a formerly miserable person.
If people don't know how you are, they cannot help you.
Anxiety is the rattling of the lid on the pot of boiling water.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's connected, like me letting go of the past, me not hanging on to my anger, me like trying to become a present being.
You're not in your peak dieting phase now.
I mean, I was only in it for like a quick 6 minutes on a car ride once because I was in between.
Can we stop for snacks?
Yeah, I was equidistant between two fast food places.
So that if I'm in a situation with like my older daughter and she says something hurtful to me, like you're wearing a lot of statement jewelry right now.
In the very, very niche world of American ghost towning, my dad is a minor celebrity.
Well, we have 50% of the country's in dire poverty, is in homelessness. You know, LA is
50% of the country is in homelessness. That seems like not a correct statistic. Hey, this is Sean Conroy, and you're listening to Sean Conroy Gets Happier, a podcast in which I, Sean Conroy, talk about how I, Sean Conroy, am trying to get happier via my podcast, Sean Conroy Gets Happier. It is Easter Sunday. I hope you are having a happy Easter. It's Easter Sunday when I'm recording this. I don't know. You might be listening to it at a different time since it won't come out until after Easter is over. So I don't know. Happy Halloween. Merry Christmas. Christ is risen. So this week, somebody tweeted at me to say that they love the podcast, which was delightful. I love compliments. Who doesn't? We're all doing the best we can. This was somebody who found out about the show from hearing me on Jackie Cation's podcast, which is called The Dork Forest. I did Jackie's show, I don't know, a month ago, 2 months ago. It honestly could have been 50 years ago in this fucking Rip Van Winkle continuum we're living right now. On her show, Jackie talks to people about stuff they love, stuff they're interested in, stuff they are passionate about. She was kind enough to have me on. I talked about, what else? Improvisational comedy. Yes, dork forest indeed. Anyway, this person was listening to the show and heard me plug my show, this show, so they tweeted at me. This was the tweet they sent to me. Love your podcast. Started listening after I heard you on Dork Forest. Your pod is helping a lot during this really hard time. Thank you. I thought that was unbelievably kind, and it made me so happy to know that somebody who had not been listening to the show now was listening to the show. And I would like to figure out a way to get more people to do that. So I am requesting that you help me with that. Here are the things I would like you to do. The first thing is go to iTunes, write a review, and rate the show. I wrote write a review and write the show, but don't write the show. I write the show. You can just listen and rate it. I think right now we have about 20 ratings. Probably 19 of them are from the same person, and I know who you are. There's 2 reviews, maybe. Anyway, help us out, because I do think that the more reviews, the more ratings you get, the more likely it is for the podcast to pop up when people are looking for stuff. Here's the second thing you could do is recommend podcasts to me that I might be a good guest for. And on top of that, if you think of it and feel like it, recommend to those podcasts that they have me as a guest. You know, like I said, this person is listening to the show because they heard me on Jackie's podcast. And then here's the last thing you could do for me is tell one person to listen to one episode of the show. If they don't like it, at least you tried. If they really don't like it, maybe you've ruined your relationship with that person and they will never trust you again. I guess we will have to hope for the best. Whatever the case, thank you for doing any of those, and thank you even for doing none of those. Now, last week I talked to Danielle Schneider about a lot of things, but one thing we talked about was how my apartment is a bit of a mess. I walk in and there's piles of stuff here, piles of stuff there. In fact, I'm sitting here right now and I'm looking around and there's stuff that could be done differently, stuff that could be put away, stuff that could be more organized. On this week's episode, I talked to Tracy McCubbin. Tracy's a clutter expert. She even wrote a book about it, which is called Making Space Clutter-Free, the last book on decluttering you'll ever need. I sat down with Tracy and I told her a little about my situation. I didn't get right into it directly because, as she pointed out later, there's sometimes a lot of shame involved in how out of control one's clutter situation has gotten. I started slow. I kind of sidled up to being direct with her. But we got there. And she had a lot of insight into how things could change, why things should change, and what could happen if things don't change. How do you know if you have a problem with clutter? Like, it seems like a lot of people could just go, well, this is just how my house is, you know?
Right.
I had somebody say to me recently, I was complaining because I had a couch full of clean laundry that I had not put away. And I said, you know, my place is a mess. I have laundry on the couch. And they were like, well, it's always like that. There's always laundry on the couch, or there's mail on the table, or there's this. So how do you know when it's a problem?
Okay, so two things. I want to clear this up.
Clean off my couch.
Yeah, put your laundry away. Don't put it down, put it away, as my grandma would say. So there's sort of two things that we're talking about. I'm talking about clutter in all of our lives. Then there are a lot of people who are going to listen to this who are going to go, wait, is she talking about hoarding? Am I a hoarder? And hoarding's a disorder, and there's a lot of great help for it, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about all of us who have too much stuff in our house. Right. And when it's a problem is when you can't do the things you want to do in your house because the stuff is around. So let's say when your friend came over, you would have liked them to sit on the couch, but they couldn't sit on the couch because it was covered with laundry. Or you want to eat dinner at your dining room table, but you can't because it's covered with mail. Or you want to cook a healthy dinner, but the kitchen counters are all covered. So it's when the stuff starts to get in the way of what you want to do. And I'm going to interrupt you.
Yeah, please.
And when you get this feeling, and the best way to describe it is when you feel like you don't own your stuff anymore, but your stuff owns you.
I liked something you said in your book where you said, it was something like, is your place a space that works efficiently for you and your family?
Right. Because at the end of the day, our home is a tool. Right? That's really what it is, a place to sleep and eat and rest. And you want your home to be restful and shareable if you want to have people over. But, you should come home.
I do. If anybody wants to come over, feel free.
Good. Thursday?
I'll have laundry on the couch, so.
Oh, I'll put it away.
That's what you do, right?
Exactly. Trust me, many a dinner party, I'm like, you just asked me over here to look at that closet, didn't you? But look, your show is called Get Happier, right? So that's my goal. I want people to be happier. And so much of what I see is that people are drowning in their stuff. It sounds so extreme, but I feel like we're in a clutter crisis. And people have too much stuff. Only 25% of Americans can park their cars in their garage.
Because they have
a garage full of crap.
Which probably is never going to be used in any way.
No, the offsite storage business is $1 billion business. I have been in easily 500 storage units. I have never once seen anything in that storage unit that's worth more than they paid to store it. Never.
And I'm just thinking about this right now. I didn't think about this before, and I probably should have. But do you feel like this is, you were saying that you didn't even know organizing was a thing. Do you feel like this is a thing that has gotten worse in the last 10, 15, 20, 50 years than it was before that. Like I just don't see a lot of pioneer stories where people are like,
I had so much clutter in my wagon.
We're never going to be able to fit all this in the Conestoga.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I do think so. And I think it's a kind of a perfect storm of, in the same way that the advent of processed foods and, they had the World War II and we made all these processed foods for the troops. What do we do with them? We're going to convince housewives that this is the easier way to cook. So then we started to see a rise in obesity because people were eating crap. In the same way that we saw cheap consumer goods manufactured overseas, especially in China, the fact that the idea that more stuff represents more wealth, right? So lower socioeconomic groups are like, oh, I have all this stuff now. Look, I look fancy. And plus, it's never been easier to shop. Right. I mean, I don't care what you say, and Jeff Bezos can come gunning for me. Amazon is like gambling. It's like the slot machines.
You can just go on,
ding, 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 ding,
get
ding.
a hit.
Yeah. It's a dopamine hit. It's what
unlike gambling, you always get the thing you order.
Exactly.
Except once I did get an extra nozzle for my sink that I did not order. So I felt like I was winning, and then I had it installed, and it's worse than the old one.
Right. So you actually lost.
I did.
I mean, look, with things like Instacart, you can go to the grocery store without even putting pants on. Mm-hmm. So it's so easy to
That, by the way, is a thing that I do anyway sometimes.
Oh, you're the guy. Mm-hmm. Do you go to the Ralph's over on?
That's my favorite.
Yeah, I've seen you. It gets a little tricky in the veggie department, doesn't it?
It's chilly.
Well, somebody's got to do it. So to wrap all that up, yes, I think that it's a perfect storm of a lot of things, and we're at this tipping point. We're at this tipping point of too much stuff. People are unhappy in their homes. The climate crisis has everything to do with this. Like, when you throw something away, where's away? Mm-hmm. Where's it going?
Right. No, I will say that, and this was something I was aware of before I started looking into your book, I definitely don't walk into my house and relax. I walk into my house and go, there's so many things I should be taking care of right now. I wonder what's on TV.
Right, because clutter is a constant to-do list. Mm-hmm. That's the way it feels. The way clients explain it is like, it's as if it kind of just tightens their chest a little bit, and they're like, ugh, I got to deal with that, right? And then they've done all this science around it that it actually raises your stress levels. Like, people in cluttered homes are more stressed out. They have higher cortisol levels, which we know are not good for us. They did a really interesting study. They put people, I'm going to get it not exactly right, but they put people in
This is a very scientific show.
I know.
So I don't want to make any claims.
Oh, no. You'd be surprised at the letters you get when the emails you get when you don't get something right. Uh-huh. But they put people in an uncluttered kitchen and offered them a cookie and a carrot, and the majority of people took a carrot. And they put people in a cluttered kitchen, offered them a cookie and a carrot, and the majority of people took a cookie.
So the people in the cluttered kitchen were smarter than the people in the uncluttered kitchen.
I was like, is it a salted chocolate chip? Like, what kind of cookie? Because if you offered them an oatmeal raisin, then I would have taken the carrot.
So I was looking around my place before I left today. Just right in sight of me walking in the door, I counted 8 different spots that are undealt with.
Right.
Not huge, but like, this bunch of crap needs to be dealt with. This bunch of crap, there's mail. There's a bunch of stuff I need to get rid of that I'm like, oh, maybe I should take this to Goodwill, or I don't know.
Or maybe I'm going to sell it. Should I put it on eBay? Would anybody pay anything for this?
And that's not, and like you said, it's a constant to-do list. It's right in my face as soon as I walk in the door. So here's a question that I have, which, there's no way for you to answer this specifically about me, but I feel like you probably have encountered a variety of problems that people have. Why am I not dealing with this stuff?
I think
everybody.
Right. Well, in my book, I talk about what I call the clutter blocks. These, what I think are these emotional stories that we've written about our stuff. And you probably have clutter block number 3, which is avoiding my stuff.
Sure.
I have it. That's mine. I just don't want to be a grown-up sometimes. And I think that I often see when people are successful in their professional life and work really hard and are doing all these things, that by the time you get home, you're like, I just can't deal with this.
Right.
Like, I just don't want to. And it's also the volume is too much. We're getting into that time of year. The rest of the country won't understand this, but where everybody in Los Angeles gets mailed screeners.
Right. I got 4 yesterday.
Yeah. Which, by the way, you could probably watch on streaming.
Right. There's
Right.
no reason to be sending those out anymore.
No, and you can't throw them away because they're going to go through.
And they're all things that I would not watch anyway.
Exactly. But that's clutter you didn't even invite in, but yet you have to deal with it.
Right. It's now on my coffee table.
Right, exactly. So I think that it's part of realizing your block about it and also going, you know what, this is part of being a grown-up and I've got to set aside a little bit of time. In the olden days when I was a kid, there was only TV at a certain time, right? You knew, I want to watch my show at 9:00, even before you could tape it.
I got 2 hours a week, by the way, so.
Right. Oh, you did? I got a half an hour a day. If I wanted to watch an hour show, I had to take it from another night. So I would save up for like Friday night because there was a bunch of good.
What shows did you watch?
Well, Love Boat,
Okay.
Charlie's Angels. I'm absolutely telling you how old I am, aren't I?
That's okay.
You were right there with me on all those shows.
Well, I mean,
Welcome back, Cotter. I mean,
we had different tastes, but we had a similar era,
Exactly. But if you think about it, those shows were not until 8:00 at night. So when you came home from work or you came home from school, you had sort of, other than dinner, a couple hours to neaten up the house.
Right.
But now we walk through the door and you're like, oh my golly, 90 Day Fiance. I have 2 more seasons to go.
No, I'm all caught up.
On 90 Day.
I've never watched it. But you're right. I mean, I walk in the door and I check my email, or I go through Twitter, or I go on various websites, or I read what's going on, or I turn on CNN or MSNBC or, God help me, Fox News to find out, what's the latest whatever bullshit thing is going on.
But this goes back to what you were saying about the pioneers. Like, we don't live in a culture of, we don't think about repairing things or fixing things or sort of chores, right? We don't think about it that way anymore. And so what's happening is our stuff is getting the best of us.
Right. So that's why I have all these piles of crap around.
Yeah.
And I just have to figure out why I'm avoiding each of these things.
Right.
Because that's another thing you talk about in your book is what's the thing? It's like 3 steps back or something like that?
Yeah, that clutter starts 3 steps back. So people always say to me, well, I just wanted you to, help me with my living room. And I'm like, well, your living room is full of all this old sports equipment that should be in the garage, but it's not in the garage because the garage is so full you can't park a car in it. And then the cupboard's in the garage where we really need to start. So it's all of our storage spaces are full. And then we just keep bringing more stuff in. I always tell people, what do you want your home to be? Like, do you want it to be a place that you can entertain?
In Malibu would be my answer.
Right. I actually don't want to be living. And by the way, that happens all the time. People are like, you know what? I just hate where I live. Like, I don't even care. Why am I going to do this? But it's about what do you want it to be restful? Do you want to bring, a partner into your life? Do you want to open a bit, whatever you want? Because it's just not enough to say, like, I got to get rid of it without a goal. Because if you just get rid of it, then you're just going to not do it, and then you're going to feel bad about yourself.
Right.
So it's like, oh, this is what I want. I want to come home and be able to, yell at Fox News and not feel bad about all the stuff. So it's
yell, go, you're right.
I believe, yay.
Right.
Finally.
Yeah. Boy, Hannity really has it going on.
Oy.
But yeah, no,
Yes.
that makes sense that I would have to sit down. Because I will say in my defense, and I don't feel like, you're attacking me, but I will say in my defense, at one point.
Slightly judging, but not attacking. No,
like 2 years ago, maybe a little more than 2 years ago, I did have this sort of conversation with myself. and I said, let me figure out how to make my place. I think what it was I went and visited my college roommate and his wife, both good friends of mine that I've known for, 75 years at this point since we lived together.
When you were pioneers.
Yeah. And I was at their place. They live in Idaho, and they bought a piece of land up in a place called Ketchum, and they built their own house there. And they both are pretty good at being efficient. She in particular is incredibly efficient. And I remember I was outside and I was like, the sun is too bright. I am getting burned. Let me go inside and see if they were not around. I was like, let me go inside and see if I can find some suntan lotion. I walked into their house and I stood for about 10 seconds and just looked around, and there were drawers everywhere and dressers, and they had, it's a big open space. So the kitchen is there and the dining room is there. And I just was like, I bet it's in that drawer. And I went, and there was the suntan lotion.
Right. Like someone had thought about it.
Right. And I was like, God, I would love it if my place was like that, instead of like this morning when I was just looking for tape and I couldn't find it for 10 minutes. So I took my kitchen and I literally drew out all the cupboards and I wrote down everything I had, and I was like, where am I going to keep everything? And I set up a whole system. And of course, in the intervening time, and it was great because I knew where everything was. And then in the intervening time, a friend of mine moved in for a while who is somebody who collects both kitchen stuff and glass bottles. Mm-hmm. So she changed everything all around, and I've never been able to get it back.
Right.
But I guess what I'm saying is that the kind of thing that you need to do in order to get things to the way you want them to be?
Yeah, you do. You got to put the work in. And I think that's what people don't. And that's the funny thing about right now in this sort of cultural zeitgeist. It's like everybody declutter. Well, what people aren't saying is, it's hard. It's a lot of work. I mean, you shared with me that your parents just downsized.
Right.
And I'm sure it took a whole crew of your family to do it.
Luckily, I live in California. They live in New York, so I was not involved. But what I was saying to you is that they did a terrible job.
Right. I mean, that's what happens all the time, So I think it takes a little bit of work. So it's about looking at the goal that you want and then putting the work into, what do you want your place to be? I mean, lucky in the book, I map it out room by room and kind of give people a real way to approach it as if you were working with me as a client. But you also gotta schedule the time in, it's not, you're not gonna, I mean, I do, but I'm crazy. You're not going to wake up and go, you know what I want to do? I want to organize right now. You got to say, like, you know what? I'm going to give it 2 hours this weekend and kind of break it off. Start small. Rome didn't get cluttered in a day. So take little bite-sized chunks. Did it feel good when your kitchen was organized?
It was great. It was great. Because I do cook and I like cooking and just knowing where everything was and where things went when I put them away. And
it takes, we're going to get into science again. Have you read anything about decision fatigue?
I have heard of it. I have not specifically read about it.
Super quick. Basically, the part of the brain that makes decisions, they've found out gets tired faster than the rest of the brain. And when it gets tired, it defaults to making bad decisions.
Right.
That's its default. So if your kitchen isn't organized and you don't know where everything goes, when you're putting the dishes away, you're like, where should this go? What? You're making another decision. Right. And we're making so many decisions in the day. So the nice thing about, a place for everything and everything in its place is that you don't have to make that decision anymore. Oh, this is where my keys live. And when I go get them tomorrow, that's where they're going to be.
Yeah, I mean, I did at one point have somebody recommend to me a bunch of studies about decision fatigue, and I just couldn't pick one to read.
I couldn't decide. Yeah. I saw where you were going. It took me a minute.
But so you're saying almost like you decide to, I don't know.
Like embark on a health regime.
Exercise.
Or, exactly. Like you're like, I'm going to take up CrossFit and I can't start 7 days a week. And you plan it in. And, I have a lot of people who are like, you know what, I'm going to take a week off of work. Like I'm going to just get my house back together. And it feels great. And Sean, the thing is, this isn't about, there's no right way. I'm not saying you only own 30 items or, be a minimalist. I'm just saying I want your house to work for you and I want you to be happy in your house. I want you to come home and be like, I like it here.
Yeah.
That's what I want.
That's what I want too. That's the whole point of the show, is that if
we're trying to get you happier,
at some point I can come home and be happy in my house. We'll see what happens. But one thing. So this is kind of a little bit of a trick question, but I feel like in your book you talk a lot about people who they start to organize their space, and good things end up happening. Somebody finds a boyfriend, or somebody, finds a bunch of checks that enable them to pay off. And are there any counters to that? Is there anybody who...
Oh, I got a good story.
You're like, well, they didn't organize their space and they died in an avalanche of Limoges china and Hummel figurines.
Well, there's always that. I mean, about once a year, right? Don't we get some old guy in Echo Park that gets
It always
buried?
goes back to the Collier brothers, right?
Yes, it does. Yeah, that's how the whole thing started. Yeah, but I mean, I feel like once a year there's some guy in Echo Park that's like buried under his books. Though I did have a client who, she sort of kind of pulled out of the organizing process about halfway through and was like, I don't really have a vision and I'm going to be fine. And then she ended up getting divorced, and she had this lifelong stalker who came back and started stalking her again. So I don't like to take credit for that, but
So don't fuck around with clutter.
Exactly. It is not something, but I do have a lot of people where I'll start to work with them, and it's hard. It's emotionally hard, and it's physically hard, and they'll back off. And then, a year or two later, they'll be like, okay, I'm really ready to do this.
It's interesting.
I can't live like this anymore. That's what I hear all the time. I can't live like this anymore.
Right.
I'm not happy.
Right. And it is a specific aspect that's part of a whole life, but has an impact on your whole life. Just like starting CrossFit, or I would say don't start with CrossFit right away. I would say work up to CrossFit.
Right.
But
Right.
But it is a thing that has an effect on every aspect of your life.
Right. Right.
I mean,
and just think about, even the simple fact, one of the things that so many clients that I deal with, there's so much shame and embarrassment, right? I should be able to keep a tidy house, or I can't have friends over. Just that you think like, I don't want to have anybody come to my house. That's something that you carry around with you. You feel like you're sort of walking around with a secret.
Right. Yeah, because if they come over, they might see all the piles of crap. Or the counter to that is I do have people over, and then they leave, and I'm like, I wonder what they thought about that.
That pile,
that old cooler, and those empty wire baskets sitting by the front door.
I will say many new client has called with the motivation of wanting to bring a new partner, boyfriend, girlfriend into their life, where they're like, I can't bring someone into this.
Right.
Like, here, let me clear off the bed and woo you, you know? It's a good
because somebody comes in and you're like, no, this is normal. This is normal. And they're like, no, it's not.
It's actually not.
Yeah. So let's say I come in, and this is purely hypothetical, but it's still me.
Okay.
I come in and I go, I need help. I need, how would that process begin?
Well, the first thing is I would come to your space and I'd say, what does...
I don't like having people at my space because there's so much shame. So.
Right, exactly. You know what? Many times I have gone to have a consult with someone, and they're standing by the front door, and they're like, yeah, I'm not letting you in.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, okay.
That's how deep it goes.
Yeah, that's how deep it goes. It's shame, right?
Yeah.
And that usually goes back. That probably started when they were kids, right? Clean your room, and you're so messy, But it would be going into your space and saying, well, what doesn't work for you? What don't you like? Like, what do you wish, what do you want from this? What's your vision? And then, and once I start to ask the question about what makes you crazy, that's when, you're like, it makes me crazy that I can't put my clothes away because my closet's so full of clothes from the 80s, or I want it, you're
the
great.
60s. Got to get rid of these bell bottoms.
I know, everyone always says to me, but it's going to come back in style again. I'm like,
Right.
if you wore it the first time, you don't get to wear it the second time. That
It
ship
doesn't
has
work
sailed.
for you anymore. Yeah.
There's also, I have this weird theory that I think that sometimes people get stuck dressing in a style of when their life was the happiest. Like my dad still wears a backpack and a down jacket. Like he kind of looks like a student at 75.
Right.
And I think that's because when he was in law school and riding a bike everywhere, that was like his happiest time in his life.
What does he keep in the backpack?
Well, my dad's a hoarder.
Uh-huh.
So my dad looks like he's about ready to do his taxes at any moment. It's all full of paperwork.
Oh, really?
And then he usually drags another box on one of those little luggage carts full of more paperwork.
Wow. Does he still have a bike?
I counted 36 the last time I was at his house.
So he is a hoarder.
He is a hoarder. Yeah.
So it makes sense in a way if you
Yeah.
want to get into the psychological profile.
It took me about 6 years to realize it.
That
No idea. Didn't put it
This
together.
is a reaction
Yep.
to...
And a client who is a Jungian psychiatrist, he goes, wow, you took very kind, you took your psychic wound and turned it into your life's work. And I was like, oh crap, I did, didn't I? Didn't even connect the dots. But I think watching someone struggle with their relationship, like I've watched the extreme and I've watched the cost it's been, gives me so much empathy for everybody else.
Right.
Like, yeah, this is hard. I get it.
Right. So you have lived counter to that and helped people with their, which is nice. Because I think about that sometimes. You know, like I said, my dad has all this stuff and he's very attached to it. And I am not exactly the same, but I feel like I have some of those tendencies.
Sure, it's passed down. I mean, it's, they talk about like family inherited trauma that sort of families will, and I think that our relationship to stuff, is definitely, it's how we view things. Like, I spent a lot of time with my grandmother, and she was of this very idea of like, oh, that's the nice stuff. We only use that on special occasions. And there was so much stuff when she passed away that never got used because the special day never came.
Right.
And so that was something that I inherited. And, now I try and put my little lean cuisine on a nice china plate when I eat by myself.
Right. I got to get some china and some lean cuisine. That sounds great. You have something in your book that you say 3 is the magic number. And that, obviously that's a great De La Soul song, but
yes. 3 in time to spree.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So I feel like kind of when you get, it's like if you have 3 days worth of mail on your dining room table, then
3 months.
Right. Exactly. But it just multiplies, right? So it's like, oh, today I was looking at the little chair by where I get dressed and I was like, I had 2 sweatshirts and a pair of sweatpants. And I was like, okay, because I know there's something about that pile of stuff that'll just attract more. You're like, oh, there's already a pile there, so let me pile more. So 3 just seems like a really good number to be.
So this would be after you've gotten yourself sort of in order.
This is like keeping the clutter. Right. This is the clutter. But this is a big question. Like, do I need to declutter? We sort of talked about, does my stuff own me or do I own my stuff? I feel like you should be able to neaten up, tidy up, put together a room, kitchen, living room, bedroom in under 20 minutes.
Right.
And if it takes you longer than that, the stuff has gotten the upper hand.
Yeah, and if just saying that, I'm like thinking about my place. It would be a 2-week job for me to get the place in order.
Right. Like, could you?
My stuff owns me.
I know. But we're going to get you happier. Did you?
Good luck with that, by the way.
Oh, I am very tenacious. I will wear you down. I will show up with jazz hands in the morning. Right. My clients are like, are you? Oh, I'm like, yep, I am always
Yeah, I
happy.
bet that's a part of it because you talk a lot in your book about the emotional aspect of things. And obviously when one person is emotional, you have to react to that in some way.
Yeah, it's in some ways I feel very grateful because I get to kind of be with people during really difficult times. But yeah, it's a lot. I have to do, I don't know, I learned this, Oprah does it. So I was like, oh, if Oprah does it, it's good for me. But you kind of put this sort of little protective white light around yourself because shit comes flying.
Right.
Literally.
Right, and there's nobody else around.
Yeah. No, it's
so you have no choice but to, in some sense, be
the punching bag,
the target.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yep. And people get angry. People really beat themselves up. How did I let it get like this?
Angry at themselves.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of beating up. I spent all this money. I don't use this stuff. Why can't I keep my house neat? People like to be really hard on themselves.
I love it.
Yes. I was going to say, I have a feeling. I have a feeling you understand.
It's one of my favorite hobbies.
To beat yourself up.
Yeah.
I think we should turn it into an Olympic sport.
Right. Yeah. So.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure, of course.
Sure. So in the book, I talk about the 7 emotional clutter blocks, and the way I describe them is they're the stories that we've written about our stuff. And in reading the book, was there one or two that jumped out at you that you think you might have?
I feel like I related to all of them in one way or another.
Wow. Okay.
I'm trying to remember, and I definitely wrote them all down. But how about this? I brought some things.
Clutter?
Yeah.
Awesome.
I don't know if it's clutter or not.
I'll be the judge of that.
Stuff that I have.
Okay.
And maybe we can figure out whether any of these. I'm sure some of the the clutter blocks
will come
apply
up
to these things. But
Great.
let's see.
Oh, I love
Let's see what
this.
you would say to me if I pulled these out.
This is so great.
Okay, so here's the first thing.
Okay.
This is my high school football jersey.
Okay.
And it's just been in my closet for 35 years or whatever.
Okay.
Clearly not something I would ever wear again.
Okay. So
it's also the away jersey, not the home jersey. So I don't know if that's significant.
it's less, right? So a couple questions. Did you love playing football?
I did.
Do you have other memorabilia around football? Do you have photos? Do you have your Letterman's
I have a couple of photos, and I do have my jacket from then.
Which it's a little bit more, I think a football jacket's a little more significant because you're a little bit more big man on campus than just the away. Does it have
By the way,
your
you'll notice that it is not particularly dirty.
Right.
So it's not like I was
starter
out there all the time.
Does it have your name on the back?
No, it doesn't.
Do you
Which is actually very disappointing. We did that. This is actually terrible. But my football team decided not to have our names on our jerseys to look like the Penn State football team. Little did we know that there was an abuse scandal going
that's
on
not
that whole
the team to model yourself after. So, okay, can you fit into it?
No.
Okay, can't wear it.
No.
Haven't worn it. Doesn't have the name of the school or your last name on it.
Correct.
It goes.
Get rid of it.
Yep.
Okay.
This is so fun.
Here's
Okay.
Here's the next thing.
Okay, good. Oh.
This is a script from a television program called Love, Inc. I'm sure you probably never heard of it. It was a sitcom on UPN in 2005, 2006. This episode is titled The Honeymooners, and this is the first script that I ever wrote that became an actual episode of television. So you see it says,
I would keep that.
Written by Sean Conroy, and then inside is the date that we did the table read. This is the table draft from October 31st, 2005.
I would keep that. It's the first.
Yeah.
It's the first, and it's I would I would put on a bookshelf next to photo albums or something. That's pretty cool.
Okay, so I'm going to hold on to
Yeah.
that.
Ooh, wow. We're two. Okay. Oh.
So here's.
Oh, this.
I just have two more things.
Okay, but these are good.
Here is the first one.
Okay.
This is a. Let's see what it says.
I don't know. Let me only from the back.
Yeah.
It's school homework.
Well, it's a test.
Okay.
It's the first trimester final exam from November 29th, 1982 for Advanced Placement English 3.
In high school?
In high school. And this is one of, I would say, 75 or 100 papers and tests and things that I still have from high school and college.
Right. So that was going to be my question to you is if you there's no world, I stake my reputation on it, that you only have that one.
No,
you probably
no.
have boxes of them.
Oh, yeah. Not boxes, but I do have a big accordion folder filled with them. I got a B on this particular test, so it's not like I was tearing down the academic. And then I will just read you the first question, because I looked at it today and I was like, this is insane. Alliteration was the principal poetic device used in the Middle Ages, but it is with this curious poetic device that we may make definite observations about life in the Middle Ages. Consider alliteration and what it tells of daily or courtly life in medieval times. And this is what I wrote. It tells us that people probably tried to speak in poetry using alliteration. That seems crazy. I mean, I was a sophomore in high school. I wasn't an idiot, so I was definitely bullshitting. But to try to get away with the fact that people spoke in poetry using alliteration seems insane. So anyway, there's that.
Right. So here's the thing about that. Like, once you could bring it out at a dinner party and sort of charm people with it, but it's not your shtick.
And I would have to have a dinner party.
Right. So there you go. I would let that go. You could take a photo of it, but I would let it go.
Right.
It's not, no.
Okay.
Yeah, totally.
And then here's the last.
But then I think you got to do a deeper dive.
With all of that stuff.
All right, so let's bring that one back. This is really interesting. I would call this clutter block number 1.
Right.
And I think you're deep in clutter block number 1. I would put that script with it, and I would put your football jersey. Clutter block number 1 is my stuff keeps me stuck in the past. So what this stuff tells you is that your best days were behind you.
I hope that's not true, because they were not that good.
I don't think so.
They
You're
were
lovely.
not that good.
I mean, I don't think you're going to play in the NFL. I'm going to go out on a limb.
I don't know.
Right. Now that Colin Kaepernick's out, there's a spot.
Yeah.
So it's just, this stuff can be, the test can be a little amusing. But is it worth dragging around and have a box of dusty old papers full of, you could take a picture of it if you want to think it's funny.
By the way, to the teacher's credit, after my first answer, he wrote, doesn't really make much sense.
But you still got a B, so it got better from there.
Right. The rest of it was pretty good.
And by the way, is that mimeographed?
Yes, it is. You're correct.
Oh, ye elder.
This is
This is
from a different time.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah.
That's so good.
He clearly had to type that up on carbon paper, right? And then run it off in a machine.
And they'd all kind of come out of that room like a little
smelling.
loopy.
Yeah, because of the stuff.
The whole area of magic in the poem is Celtic.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think you can never go wrong, drawing the parallel between the Celts and magic. Okay.
So last thing
that is being unrolled
is a portrait of Zeus. And as you can see, Zeus is wearing blush. This was something I did in 2nd grade. So I was 7 when I did this. And I was a little obsessed with this book of Greek myths by somebody named, and I'm sure I'm pronouncing this incorrectly, Dolari or something like that. D''Aul something. But I painted this picture of Zeus, and clearly it made enough of an impression on my family that they laminated it. Yes.
Now, here's what I would say. For shits and giggles, I might frame it and hang it in a bathroom. But if you're not going to hang it, let it go.
Right.
But this is actually pretty funny. Put a gold frame. I would if you're zhuzhing your apartment up.
Yeah.
It's a pretty it would look really people
in
go,
the bathroom.
Yeah, 1,000%. No, because you also want it to be when you start to have dinner parties, which we're going to get you to having. People are going to come out of the bathroom and go, "What is that picture of Zeus?
What is he wearing on his face?
Yeah, what is that like?" He's very
in my 7-year-old mind. This was just the look of health, but it just looks bizarre.
But can we talk about the false eyelashes?
False eyelashes above his eyebrows.
Yeah, that's my favorite.
Above his eyebrows.
That's I was like, wait, what is this? I would frame that and hang that in the bathroom because that's a giggle. That's worth a giggle.
All right, well.
But really interesting, you are lugging your past around. Really a lot about.
All those great days I had back in the past.
Right.
Which, that's completely debatable.
Right. So isn't that interesting? Like, why do you keep the stuff that reminds you of a time that you weren't happy? No, I'm asking.
I know. Things just got real.
Yeah, things got real, Sean. Do you have more? This was so fun.
No, that's all I have.
But I think that it's really, when you are on this journey to find happiness, right? I think that's a great that's a great question for you. Like, does this really make, does this make me, am I happy looking at this?
Right.
Like, we got a good laugh out of that, Zeus.
Right.
And no, but if I came into your house when I'm invited to the dinner party,
Yes.
and I saw
You're
that.
number one on the list, by the way.
You will not be surprised, but I'm an excellent dinner party guest. But I would crack up, right? I go, oh, that's so funny.
Yeah.
That's so great. Oh.
I don't know if it says that anywhere, but that's who was my
I love
second
who
guest.
laminated it? Your mom?
I believe, I could be wrong about this. No, I think it was my dad because my dad was a high school principal, and I think they had a machine at his high school that he could do that with.
Right.
So, although he was not a principal at that time. I don't know. Now I'm confusing myself with my own history.
Something. Yeah. So, there's something to get a giggle out of it,
Right.
but, there's definitely that thing about so much of that stuff in the past, like, oh, the mistakes I'd made, or, what if I'd gone a different way? And,
Right.
What
if I had gone a different way? We wouldn't even be here right now.
I know. So maybe I'm glad that you have all this clutter. Because I'm actually here and having a delightful time.
I also have I do have a problem throwing things away. Okay, so we have to get out of here, but I will leave you with this. I won't leave you with this, but when I was in my mid-20s, I would say, this was back when people still wrote letters back and forth all the time. And I had a huge box filled with every letter I'd ever gotten.
Right.
Like birthday cards from great aunts to the girl I met over the summer and stayed in touch with for a couple years or whatever. And I was cleaning out my apartment and I was like, why am I holding on to this? I should just get rid of it. And I threw them away, and I've always regretted it since then. But then there's also this thing where I hold on to things. I just the last couple of years have started immediately throwing away, and I'm sorry to say this, I hope none of my friends are listening.
Birthday cards.
Christmas cards.
Oh.
People send out Christmas cards with photos of their kids on them, and I'm like, goodbye.
No.
But for a long time, I would hold on to those
But
things.
you're not their historian.
Right.
This is not like, I always joke, like, do you really need to know the journey of your dentist children?
Right.
Like, no, the Christmas card is like, here's an update, but get rid of it. A woman said to me, I did a book event recently, and it was so profound. And she was talking about, one of the other clutter blocks is trapped with other people's stuff. And this is the stuff that we've inherited from people who have passed on. And I can't possibly let go of it because Aunt Gracie passed away, and, we're really wrapped around the axles. And this woman at the book event got very emotional and was saying, that's me, I can't remember the circumstances, but everybody had sort of died in a short period of time, and she had 2 storage units of their stuff. And she said, it's so tough being the museum for the rest of the world. And like, she felt this obligation to carry the history on. And it's like, well, people die every day and their stuff goes away and we never knew them, and when that becomes a burden to you, like, oh, great, there's my dentist kids. That's nice. I felt a moment of something, but to carry that around, like, I've got to keep this, you don't.
Right.
And I think that, that's when the stuff starts to own you.
By the way, my dentist's son was Ryan Reynolds, so I should have held on to that stuff.
I did uncover at a client's.
This is exactly what I was going to ask you, because
great.
I had a weird experience where for a while after I got out of college, I worked for a law firm cleaning out the houses of dead people.
Oh, you did my job.
The weirdest thing I ever found was a guy who was, I didn't do it a lot. I probably did only like 2 or 3 places, but a guy, he was an Italian immigrant who had worked as a pharmacist his entire life, and he was in his 80s when he passed away, and he had written and kept copies of, they were again, carbon. He typed them up on carbon paper. So he had copies of all the letters he had written, love letters, hundreds of love letters to newscaster Connie Chung.
Oh.
So that was kind of amazing to find. And then also I was like, this poor guy should have thrown this stuff away.
Right. And
so that this is not how I will always think of him.
Right. And also a little stalkery.
Oh, very strange.
I think the all-time, and still it's the one, we cleaned out a house after a woman had passed away in her 90s, went in her sleep, time to go. But she didn't have any kids, so the realtor was in charge of emptying the house. So hired us, we got rid of it. And I think there was like a cousin or a niece, a great niece or something. And we pulled the bed back, and behind the bed was a mummified cat that had like fallen behind the bed and like
no.
and like clawed into the wallpaper and
So
like
it just died back there.
just died back there. And like the niece was like, oh, we wondered what happened to Fluffy.
Oh no.
It was just,
And they never noticed that it stank or anything like that.
I mean, she was old,
Right.
and I noticed that there were a lot of hearing aids, so she probably didn't hear very well. And we were all like, we just,
Oh man.
that was the one that took a.
At least it wasn't Phil. That would have been worse.
Yes, exactly.
You know?
My movers. This is one of my favorite stories. This Lance, this mover that I love and I use all the time. He tells this great story of they went to move a couple that was downsizing, senior couple, and the husband was like, I don't want to go. I don't want to go over my dead body. I don't want to move. And she's like, honey, it's happening. Like, we got to do today. The house sold. I don't want to go. No, no, no. And she said to Lance, like, look, just move. Let's let him watch TV, sit in his lazy boy, like move him last, like move that part, just do everything else. So they moved the whole house. Everything was packed up. And they went to get him and he died. Oh, he was just dead in his easy chair.
He really over his dead body.
Yeah, I was like, mazel, like, good for you.
He had a vision. He knew what he wanted from his place.
He wanted to, like, my godfather just recently passed, and he was like, I don't want to leave my zip code.
Mm-hmm.
He's buried, his ashes are in the backyard.
Right.
It's like, he didn't want to go.
So I think one takeaway from all of that is if your godfather's ashes are cluttering up your place, bury them in the backyard. After I talked to Tracy, I did several of the things she recommended. My portrait of Zeus as a bearded Sally Bowles is framed and on my bathroom wall. I threw away most of the papers I had saved. By the way, most of them were extremely mediocre, which was a definite cause for self-reflection, which is fine, I think. Maybe. I don't know. Is it? I'll have to think about that. I still have the football jersey, but it's way closer to the door than it was before, and therefore way closer to the garbage chute outside. And trust me, it'll get there. It may take a while, but it'll get there. Tracy's book is called Making Space, Clutter-Free, the last book on decluttering you'll ever need. You can follow her on Twitter and Instagram at Tracy_McCubbin, 2 C's, 2 B's, one of all the other letters, and really, technically now that I'm looking at it, 3 C's. I hope this has been very confusing. Follow me on Twitter at Sean Conroy. Tweet at me about how you love the podcast. The executive producer of Sean Conroy Gets Happier is Lauren Dunitz. Our segment producer is Pete Galamaga. The show was recorded at All Things Comedy Studios in Burbank, California. Our sound engineer is Aaron Brungart, who is also our video technician, as well as a bit of a doubting Thomas. Special thanks to our guest, Tracy McCubbin. I will tell you guys that I think this coming Tuesday, the 14th of April, I will be on Eddie Pepitone's Instagram Live at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Eddie has been live on Instagram every day during this apocalypse because it was custom made for him. Thank you so much for listening. Keep your distance. Keep getting happier. And I will see you next week.